Welcome in to another episode of the My Two Bits Gators Football Podcast. I am one of your hosts, Ben, joined as always by my partner in crime, Mr. Randy. Well, almost not joined as always with some very high-level technical difficulties tonight. How we feeling, Randy? We glad to be here after all that mess?
You know what? I am emotionally and technologically exhausted. Um, so getting this Realtek array microphone, whatever, to work. In addition to that, I think it's about par for the course with what happened in Gainesville this past week between graduation weekend and protesters. I think it's just par for the course this week.
Yeah, I hear you there. So if Randy's voice sounds a little muffled or a little in a tunnel, we apologize. This is the best we could make happen for this particular episode. We did all we could do, and it's fairly decent quality. We for those that don't know, we do record this live. We also record it from afar. I'm currently in Baltimore this evening, so we're really afar tonight. And Randy's of course down in Gainesville, and we do this via an app that we record through, and it was not being very receptive to the microphone this evening. So, having said all of that, that is not what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about the 2024 schedule and a detailed look at each matchup on the schedule. So that is our topic for the pod this evening. Now, this is not like our season preview where we're going to go through and give our predictions. This is more an analysis of what we see in each one of these teams. We really took a lot of time putting this together and breaking down what each one of our opponents looks like for 2024 as far as versus last year, where the changes are to the roster. Yeah, there's a lot in every case. And what we feel that means as far as whether they're better, worse, and then of course comparing that to the fact of where we think Florida is better or worse, which we've of course already discussed rather ad nauseum. So having said that, we'll take you through a quick run here of our intro, of course, our mission, our vision, and our agenda for the pod, and then take a look at this schedule and what it means and what we think about each one of these matchups as we go. So without further ado, our mission, of course, as always, is to provide factual analysis from all things Florida Gator football. And our vision is to have unfiltered conversation around the product on the field, as well as recruiting and overall coaching decisions. Our analysis will always be based on review of film. And while we will express opinion, that opinion should always be based in some form of fact. We will also evaluate strategy and tactics and discuss observation of player personnel decisions, as well as on-field execution. So our agenda for tonight will be to review the 2024 schedule, just high level. Obviously, we've talked about it a lot, but we really want to kind of just delve into it a little deeper. And then we're going to talk about the changes to the 2024 team, very high level, because we've obviously dove into those very deeply in various different episodes so far this year, but just kind of a quick high level review of what's different about this year's team and where we think we've improved and also what's still unknown. And then from there, we're going to take a detailed look at each opponent on the 2024 schedule and what we feel are genuine, as best as we can determine, chances are from a percentage-based format of winning each of those games on the schedule, whether that be 15% or 90%, right? Any or anywhere in between, based on how we feel our kind of odds stack up in winning each of those games that we face in 2024 in that brutal gauntlet that we're going to run. And then from there, to close out, we're just going to do a very quick summary of kind of where we landed on all these things and what we feel our kind of take ended up being, and then of course our sign off. So with that, let's get things started and just kind of take a look at the 2024 schedule and what makes it so difficult. So I'll turn it over to Randy. Give me your thoughts on what makes this such a hard schedule from a purely analytical perspective. Randy, what do you got?
I think the main thing here is no cupcakes.
You're not wrong.
The when your cupcake is an FCS school like Stanford, um, it that just says it all. You look at the schools that we have in the SEC and the schools that are coming into the SEC, one of which we will preview this fall. And you look at it's not just that; it's the order as well in which we're going back and forth. And I know UCF. That was a kind of a strange game a few years back. they consider themselves the national champions because they went undefeated, whatever. You never know what Gus Malzahn has up his sleeve.
That's right.
But if you just look at everything else as a whole in its entirety, and a lot of what those schools have done the past few years, it's just murder row. Plain and simple.
Yeah. No, it really is. So I love what you said with no cupcakes. So I'll expand on that.
Expand away.
We have 11 Power 5 opponents. So that's your not just non-FCS, right? Not just FBS opponents. 11 Power 5 opponents. So forget cupcakes. We're playing basically all Power 5 teams for the entire schedule. I'll take it a step further. In the way too early top 25 that ESPN released back in January, I think it was, or maybe even late December. No, it was January when they came out with it. We had 9 of those 11 in the top 25. Now, in fairness, I don't think there will end up being 9 on our schedule that we play, or certainly when we play them in the top 25. But I think it's highly likely that it ends up being 7 and possibly even 8 from looking at this schedule. And that is absolutely ludicrous to play 7 to 8 top 25 opponents during a season. Maybe it only ends up being 6, but I don't even care. That's still absurd. That's absurd. Nobody plays that many top 25 opponents in a season, especially not at a Power 5 school. It just doesn't happen. It just does not happen. Basically, at a minimum, half of the teams we are going to play next season, half, probably more, will be ranked when we play them. That's just absurd. So that's just the breakdown from the numbers as it looks currently, and in all likelihood will look next year. That's really it. I do want to tie in real quickly back to something we've already talked about, which is what we feel like success looks like in 2024. This is why we said 7-5 is unquestionably successful next year, right? So if half your opponents are ranked next season or more, and you go 7-5, and 11 of them are Power 5 schools, and you go 7-5, you've done well. You've clearly done well. There's no question that you've had a good season if that's your schedule. Like, I don't care who you are, honestly. Like, even if you're one of the top echelon teams, you've probably done fairly well at that ranking. Maybe not if you're top 2 or 3 in the country, which we're probably going to play 2 of those, but we'll leave that alone. We'll get to that later. You probably still had maybe they're not happy with that season, and fair enough, but like it's ridiculous. And there's definitely even an argument to be made, the more I look at this, that 6-6 is an acceptable record as long as the product on the field shows competitive results and solid execution.
Mm-hmm.
But it has to look good in both of those areas. There have to be less unforced errors. We've talked about this. The quality of the play and the quality of the plays, right, being called and executed needs to look better in terms of timing, in terms of execution, in terms of delivery, right? These are the things that we're looking for. So those are really my thoughts when it comes to this. But if we see a competitive game in, game out, 6-6 with a quality of execution that is higher than what we've seen from this team in the past 2 seasons, and with play design that looks at least moderately better, yeah, I'm good. I'll take it all day. And I know that's crazy to say, but it is what it is, man. This schedule is brutal. So those are my thoughts on what success looks like. Do you have anything you want to add to that?
Well, a couple things. Energy is key. As I've called for last season, the energy, it was really tough to see some of the energy in those games. Maybe the conditioning, the strength and conditioning program, because of the revamp, maybe we will be a little bit more conditioned to be in those games. Maybe we're going to be the ones giving the blows versus taking blows. We're going to have a lot of the abilities to control offense, because when you look at last season, we had some really long drives. We have a lot of 7-minute drives. We have a lot of 12, 13 play drives, just not enough of them to control a lot of the game that we needed to from a momentum standpoint, despite the time of possession being very good, top 5 in the nation. Okay. So can it pass the eye test? Can we deliver some blows? Right? Can we have again this fall? I want more than just vanilla ice cream. I want some Neapolitan, want some chocolate, want some
Right.
strawberry, some variations in the office. Russ, where are you? Where froth out our Russ? What is he going to be able to introduce into the offense? So that's going to be great. But especially late in games, I feel like this year in the SEC, because of the additions of those two schools, because of some of the other nuances with coaching changes, coordinator changes, a lot of QB changes, it's going to be a really interesting year. Obviously, two of the biggest mysteries, A&M, Alabama, to see what's going to happen there with their QBs, their coaches. It's going to be a really feeling out. So this could be an opportunity for Florida to do some real damage and climb back to the ranks of the top of the SECs.
Yeah, no, really good points there, and I like it. I love the energy point. Of course, we know how you feel about trucking versus getting trucked. We're all very well informed. But I'm with you. And it does need to be better, and it does need to be different. And we talked about it our last pod in regards to the spring game. I have a lot of hope that it will be, and I think that hope is well placed, but remains to be seen. So let's talk about what things should be better and what things we still don't know. And just do a quick review here of the changes that we do know and don't on the 2024 team. So first off, where are we better that we know we're better? On paper anyway, because that's what we're going to talk about a lot in this as it relates to other teams, right? We don't know anything for sure yet, but the things that we can see on paper and to a degree on film with the spring game. Defense. This is the one that stands out to me more than anything, right? On paper, from a talent perspective, and again with visual evidence from the spring game, which can't read too much into it, but there's still something there. There's improvement at virtually every position group in the defense, right? Some more than others, but there's no position group that I didn't see a step up from, and don't see a step up from with talent, right? Either talent and experience, right? We talked about that in a previous episode. The mix of talent and experience coming together is so key, right? And we're starting to see more and more of that. So both on paper and with some film evidence to back it up, we are seeing significant improvement there in tackling, discipline, gap control, and coverage. We saw all of it, right? There was evidence of every single one of those things. So that is just nothing but good news when it comes to the defense and what we are going to have to see next season to have any shot of going 7-5, quite frankly. So that's my first one of where we're better. The next one is quarterback. For those who haven't seen it, we've been named by On3 as a top 10 rated QB room in the country with Mertz, Lagway, and Miller. No, it's not Miller. Millen. There we go. went back to Jack, and it's not Jack anymore. But we really do have a very high rated. That's 2 4-stars and a 5-star in that QB room, and all of them can play is what it comes down to. We're very high on talent in that QB room, higher than we've been in a really long time. When you look at depth in that room, it's really nice to see. So obviously Mertz in his second year in the system is, of course, again, an additional help there. And then, of course, we're going to see Lagway start to come into the fold, going to run some plays. I definitely think we're going to see some involvement from him. Frankly, I don't want to see that get pushed too far. I think Mertz is still needs to be the guiding force here, but I certainly do want to see Lagway get worked in. I very much would like to see a Tebow Leak situation, or Leak Tebow situation, if you prefer, circa 06. I think that would be a very good way to make this work. And I obviously not necessarily the same plays, but I don't think we need to ground and pound Lagway up the middle too much. But he could throw a jump pass against LSU. I'm good with it. It would be just fine with me. But yeah, so there is definitely, I think, good opportunity for some of that mixing and matching to happen. And I think it's really going to show some upside. So the last one that I have for improvement, and this one is maybe it's a little more of a hope, but it's on field execution and discipline, right? So when we haven't seen that evidence yet, in fairness, but when Napier says he has the system built and he's able to focus more directly on play calling, on execution, on all of these things, right? There is no reason why we can't and shouldn't expect to see improvement here. It better be better, period. So that's what I got for things that I'm expecting to see better. What do you have things that you're expecting to see better? And then we'll get into the unknowns.
I'll actually pick up from where you were. I like to say that better, be better. um, my main thing is if the system is built, which he says it is, that takes a huge gorilla off his shoulders, theoretically. So if that does, what does that allow him to do more of? Oh yeah, plan. If he's still going to remain the primary play caller, how does that play calling differ with the introduction of Mr. Callaway? Now, how does the scheme differ? Because one thing we talked about, some of the plays that he calls, we probably were more frustrated with the execution of some of those plays, as well as the timing of some of those plays. If everyone knows the pop pass, the screen pass, the bubble, everyone is aware of the trickeration that we tried that failed miserably and just completely wiped out our momentum in the Florida Georgia game last year. So, does the timing change and does the array of the plays on offense change? That's what we hope. Second thing for me is going to be what Gerald Chapman has done and then what Will Harris has done to invigorate this defense. We have a lot of great players. Pup Howard, South Carolina, I think that's one of our biggest pickups. Gums, we'll see what he is able to do at edge. Hopefully, we can get Mr. Justice Boone back on the edge. But I firmly believe in my heart of hearts and seeing what we have on paper and seeing some of the product on the spring game is that this defensive side of the football, I agree with you, believe it or not, is going to show some of the biggest changes compared to that defense a year ago. You've got Double A, you've got Big Papa Ron right there overseeing everything. I think there's going to be more accountability. Let me rephrase that. I hope there is more accountability and there's more oversight with 4 eyes being better than 2 or 8 eyes being better than 4, whatever the case might be. The other thing that I would like to see on the field, that I hope to see on the field, is if all these other things are built out from a procedural standpoint, do the Gators continue to shoot themselves in the foot procedurally with silly penalties and inopportune times? So that's what we're talking about in regards to offsides, false start, hopefully never, ever, ever same number penalty. Hopefully never, ever. You know, unsportsmanlike conducts for scaling it. Well, anyways, we won't get into that for a block kick, but it's those different things that I felt like when we had momentum or when we had the opportunity to make great stops on defense, we couldn't do it because of procedural penalties. So, having all that being said, if we can see some great improvements in those 3 areas, my book, it's going to pass the eye test that every Florida Gator fan wants to see this fall, is anticipating to see this fall.
That maybe demands to see this fall when it comes to that stuff. But yes. All right. So very quickly, what are your unknowns for next year? Where do we maybe, I guess, just hope to be better, but really we're just not sure?
Mr. Mertz, year 2 in the system.
Interesting. Okay. That's the difference we have there. Okay.
Well, here's the thing. When you look at everything else that has transpired, he had, for lack of a better term, a good season, a pretty decent season. We look at from the completions to the touchdown to interception ratio. I know people are going to say, oh, well, he really didn't throw the ball deep. So from an interception standpoint, that's not a fair number. Regardless of the fact, either way, I want to see that progression taken. I compared to Kyle Trask in Mullen's system years ago. Kyle's first year didn't look that good. Kyle's second year looked phenomenal. Now it helped that he had a target like Pitts. Oh, by the way, Mertz has a pretty good target too, a target or two, right? The other
Yeah.
thing unknown is how Callaway is going to be involved in that scheme, based off what I mentioned earlier. The other thing is going to be, well, what does this all this talent that we have on defense regarding the scheming, how does Big Papa Ron and Double A work together to make sure that we do very good analysis and game prep on the teams that we are facing with the things that you pointed out: position, gap discipline, all those things that we want to see. Are we playing a lot of zone? Are we going to play more man? Really, really curious to see how that goes in. Another thing for me is going to be strength and conditioning. Is it going to make a difference when it comes to the stamina? Also, when it comes to injury, can
Yeah.
our guys stay healthy this fall to really put on display the talent that we really have? So those are some of the big factors for me going into this fall, as far as the unknowns.
That's a great call out on injury. And, we've heard a lot in camp about the kind of focus around changing up some of the training to guard against injury. But at the end of the day, it is an unknown, no matter what you do, right? I mean, hopefully this does help, but I don't know how you can't prevent, right? You can only try to protect as best you can, but at the end of the day, there's only so much you can do. So that's a really nice call out. I have a question for you. Does Ron like it when you call him Big Papa?
That's a good question. I'll let you know hopefully in person in about 3 months.
Put your hands in the air. Okay, sorry, just a little throw it back in the day reference there. I couldn't help but think of it. Okay, moving on. So on the unknowns for me, I kept it on position group. O line. I know the staff is really high on the O line. I like what I'm seeing with O line. Obviously, I love the O line acquisition we just made this past week, though that is obviously, I think, more of a future player than a current player. But hell of a pickup. This 2024 class ended up being quite the class when you include transfers, right? For all those doubters earlier on. Anyway, we'll move on from that. It definitely looks promising, but I just don't know. What it really comes down to is, can Damian George work at tackle the way we think he can? I don't know. I'm pretty confident about the other positions, definitely more confident in the depth at the other positions. But does George work as a starting tackle? We know he didn't work as starting guard, or I'm sorry, does he work as starting guard? We know he didn't work as starting tackle. Sorry, he got that backwards. But does he work there? I hope so. I think so. It seems like he should. But again, there's been a lot of questions about strength on that. So we'll see. Again, that's why it's an unknown, right? So we'll see. My second one is wide receiver, actually. It shouldn't be a negative or anything, but I'm just not 100% sure what this group looks like together on the field against an opponent. I obviously have no doubt in Trey Wilson whatsoever, but do we have enough aside from Trey to make a defense not, scared enough not to double team him on every damn play? That's what I don't know. I just don't know. Are Chimere and K-Jack enough to make them scared enough to not double team it? Can we run Tank Hawkins out there for a play and burn him for a 90-yard touchdown because they're double teaming him? I don't know. Can we? Are we able? I don't know. Can Mizell step up? I don't know. Can Andy Jean come back from the injury and step? I don't know. There's just too many I don't knows. So to me, that's a big unknown still. I'm not confident in it overall, but I just feel like it's a big question mark, and we'll see what happens. So without further ado, we know where this team is better on paper. Like we said, we know where there's still some question marks, but I don't think, as we talked about previously, there's any question that this is an improved unit from last year. So we took that into consideration when evaluating some of these, these opponents on the schedule. So what we're going to do to look at each of these opponents and review this and give our thoughts on it is do a regular season breakdown of their win-loss for each opponent from 2023, just regular season, because that compares to our record from last year, right? No postseason for us. So we're not going to take their postseason into account for them. We're then going to do a basic offense and defensive numbers, purely total offense, scoring offense, total defense, scoring defense. So yards per game and points per game on both sides of the ball. That's it. We're then going to look at returning starters that were performers from last year. So who's coming back and who might be coming up, right? That maybe they don't have to only be an impact player from last year, but who else might be a threat, right? Like quarterback from Tennessee is a good example in Nico, right? He wasn't a threat last year, but he certainly could be one this year, right? Potential impact there. Additions and subtractions of significance for each team via either the transfer portal or losses to the draft and or graduation. Now you're seeing why the research got involved. And then finally, we will evaluate the chances to win the game and being sure to factor in home, away, neutral site, length of time with coaching staff, length of time of certain players and positions. All of these things came into our decisions when we were evaluating this. Ladies and gentlemen, Gator Nation, this pod took a lot of work to put together, so I hope you appreciate it. Randy and I put in some hours on this one. So without further ado, we will get it started with Miami. We will also alternate back and forth between the games. So I have the odd games on the schedule. Randy has the evens. I will go through, give my breakdown and analysis and my chances to win. I'll then consult Randy for his thoughts on chances to win the game, and then vice versa as we go through the schedule. So to that end, Miami. Last year, they went 7-5, which actually surprised me. I didn't realize that won that many games. But they only went 3-5 in the ACC, which is probably why I didn't realize they won that many games, because 4 of their wins were non-conference. So really not that impressive 7-5 when you look at it, because their non-conference schedule was nothing to get excited about. I think they had one team that was worth anything on their schedule, if I remember correctly. So total offense, they did rank fairly well. They were 31st in the FBS at 431 yards per game. Scoring offense was 38th at 31.5 points per game. Total defense was actually 24th in the FBS at 321.6 yards allowed per game. And scoring defense was tied for 42nd at 22.77 points per game. So top 50 in every one of those categories. It's really not bad stats when you look at it. Returning impact players for them is cornerback to Corey Couch, who had 3 INTs last year and is a solid corner. Their top 2 wide receivers come back in Xavier Restrepo and Jacoby George. And the, excuse me for butchering the name, Maugoa brothers at offensive tackle and linebacker, who are both solid players at their position. So one offensive tackle and one linebacker both return, and they're both starters, both solid. Transfers of note, they had 4 4-stars coming in and 4 4-stars going out. The 4 stars coming in, of course, are Cam Ward, the much raved about quarterback who declared for the draft and then all of a sudden said, no, never mind, I'll go to Miami. I'm sure there was no money involved in that. Moving along, running back Damian Martinez, who is very important that they got because they lost a running back of significance to them, which I'll get to in a minute. Wide receiver Sam Brown and safety Michelle Powell. Their transfers / graduations out of note were the 4-star edge Jaden Wayne, Najalik Kelly. Sorry, a lot of these names are going to be a little tricky. Running back Henry Parrish, who was not a 4-star, but was their leading rusher for the past 2 seasons. So this is why Damian Martinez was so significant for them to get. They lost their leading rusher from the last 2 years, who transferred to another team on our schedule. So did Najalik Kelly. So sounds great. Hey, they lost some of these guys. They just went to another team we're playing, so don't get excited. All right, moving along. On paper, despite the massive amounts of transfers out for the Canes, 28, they actually do look to be slightly improved with the big pickup of Cam Ward. However, this is his first game in a new system, and he's coming into a very hostile environment in the swamp, and it's going to be rocking. I mean, for those that don't know, for anybody that's a little younger to being or newer to being a Gator fan, the Canes-Gators rivalry was a big one back in the day. These teams were not friends for a very long time. This was extremely heated for a very long time in Florida, potentially even bigger than Florida State, because Florida State didn't used to be very competitive. Florida just used to beat Florida State all the time until Bowden came in and changed all that, right? So it didn't used to be the rivalry that it is now. Bowden's the one who made that much more of a rivalry. So anyway, long story short, there's no love lost between these two teams when you go back in the annals of history on this stuff. However, I like the Gators' chances here for a couple of different reasons. And again, I'm not saying that again as a pick. I'm saying that based on just the percentage evaluation. Cristobal's historically bad, and I mean historically bad coaching decisions in game. They're absolutely terrible. Really do not favor them in this game, especially again in a hostile environment where he's going to feel the pressure. Both coaches are in a pressure situation to win this game. There is no question about it. Neither one of these coaches are going to want to start this season 0-1 for various different reasons, both in year three, obviously, both in semi-precarious positions. I don't know who's. I think Cristobal might actually be a little more precarious at the moment, considering where the program was, whatever the case may be. So anyway, I have the Gators at a 67% chance to win when you factor in new quarterback, first game, hostile environment, poor decision making from the coach. And even though I do think this team on paper is a little better than last year, that's a team that went 3-5 in the ACC last year. We're not talking about a juggernaut. We're not talking about a monster team. And when you look at the talent on paper between these teams, they're pretty evenly matched even last year. So this year, I think maybe we might even have a slight edge on paper from a talent standpoint. And even if we don't, give me, our odds at home. Again, I don't love Billy's in-game coaching sometimes either, but it's certainly better than Cristobal's. So at the end of the day, that's why I have a 67% chance to win in this one based on the evaluation I can make as objectively as I can make it. So what's your take on this as far as a percentage chance based on all those factors?
Very good. Great effect the that was good. I've got a 75% chance to win this game.
I think that's up there. I think you're on the high side, but hey, that's your take, and that's fair enough. You're entitled to it. So fair enough. All right.
Yeah. A lot of things you said made a lot of sense, but the few factors that I took into consideration: is Cam Ward as good as the hype was made to be? What does that look like coming into the swamp? Road game, SEC, big conference, and then Cristobal's ability to put together a game plan like that for this environment. I don't think the odds are in their favor. I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. I mean, I obviously don't have them in their favor either. So fair enough. All right, take it away. Talk us through Samford.
Samford, the Bulldogs, people. Here we go. Game 2 of the season on the 7th of September. So most of you who don't remember might not remember a game in the swamp, I don't know, circa 3 years ago, where we were involved in a shootout with Samford. You heard me. A shootout with Samford. We actually ended up winning that game 70-52, but this was pretty much mid nosedive of the Mullen era. That was back on November of 21. And with this win, we actually ended a 3-game skid. It's going to be very, very different in fall of 2024. Let's take a look at Samford on the deeper dive. Last season, they are an FCS football team, FCS team. Overall 7-5. Conference 4-4. So not that good, 500 in conference. Trust me, we know a thing or two about being 500. I get it. 2-3 on the road, though. 2-3 on the road. So let's take a look at what they did on the offensive side of the football. On the offensive side of football, 29 points per game. 29 points per game, not terrible. Number 35 in the FCS. You tie that into yards per game, roughly 424.8 yards per game. Number 16 in FCS, and roughly 5.68 yards a play. Let's go to the defensive side of the football. Giving up 24.27 points a game, number 41 in FCS. So you see a little slippage there. And then defensive yards per game, giving up 384.9 yards per game. Call it 385. That's the biggest drop off for them because that ranked number 81 in FCS. And that averaged out to about 5.77 yards a play that they gave up. So, couple of factors. This game back in the swamp, Samford could very well be, well, actually, no, I'm not even going to say that, is our quote unquote easiest opponent this fall. It should not be a shootout like it was 3 years ago. And so it is going to be in the swamp. So, based off of that, in the environment, it is going to be rocking and rolling. Let's take a look at some of the additions and losses. Their overall recruiting rank, they're somewhere around 205. Their transfer portal rank, 140. Um, they have to replace a big piece at QB. So Michael Ayers, 4-year guy, out. Congratulations. He great production, decent production, not a bad guy. 2-3-star QB, all 4 years there at Samford. Here's the thing. Guess who they've got replacing him? A 3-star QB out of Utah who backed up Cam Rising. All right, so that's going to be interesting.
Who was it? Is it Nate Johnson?
It's the other guy. And do me a favor, I'm going to come back.
The pig farmer?
Maybe the pig farmer. Here's the thing that's interesting about the other addition that they have at QB. So they picked up a kid named Hayden Cleese. So this might not.
No, I don't know who that is. That's not the guy who backed him up directly anyway, because that wasn't. It was like Bryce or Brock something. I can't remember his name. Who was the starter against us, and then Nate came in, obviously last year. So anyway, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, correct. Here's the thing. Hayden Cleese is a 2-star, 3-star quarterback coming out of Wakulla, Florida. So that's in Crawfordville. Another gentleman who went there, Felipe Franks. Those of you might remember that name. So it's going to be Mac Howard. Mac Howard is the transfer from Utah who backed up Rising, who's now going to be the QB over at Samford.
Interesting.
Exactly. They have a wide receiver, a 2-star guy, nothing fancy, that transferred from UCF. So that's good from them. They have a 2-star wide receiver that transferred from Ole Miss. Again, nothing spectacular. They have a 3-star running back that transferred from UAB. Again, nothing spectacular. The interesting thing about what Samford's going to have to deal with is a 3-star sophomore defensive lineman that they lost to Buffalo, the Buffalo Bills. No, not the NFL team, the other FCS team. They lost. They lost a 3-star junior interior lineman. He's basically back in the portal after being in the portal a year ago. That's undecided. And then they lost a 3-star cornerback who was a junior, a 3-year starter, to Memphis, and their other cornerback they lost. He's in the portal as well, but he has not been picked up either. So, a couple things coming into play. The swamp, the environment. B, I agree with you. That's a big factor. One that I think is going to affect a lot more schools moving forward, especially when you look at what they're trying to, the environment that Napier is trying to create or recreate in the swamp by appealing to Gator Nation to come out and cheer. So you're going to have that. You're going to have the revamp that we have. Samford, from a defensive standpoint, no disrespect to their defense, but they don't seem to have the speed. The talent from the star standpoint is definitely not there. So therefore, I don't think the speed is going to be there. Some of the disciplines and the coverages are not going to be there. And I expect Trey, I expect, I don't know, Arliss Boardingham to get a lot across over the middle. Apparently, Samford has an issue with covering the middle. So if we can cross in the middle, maybe have a go route or two, it's going to be a very good thing for our offense. So on that basis, a couple other things, but keeping it higher level because it is an FCS opponent. I am giving the Gators a 100% chance.
Oh, that's super dangerous. Super dangerous.
I know.
I don't like guaranteeing. I will say 97.5 based on your analysis because I definitely think you have to give room for the upset, man. App State has to teach you that, right? They
No,
have to
no.
teach you that. You have to give room for it. I don't think it happens, but 97.5 for me. I also I definitely don't think we're losing that game for sure, but I can't call it 100. I can't do it. Can't do it.
Are you Ricky Bobby? Don't wish that on me.
But nice analysis, really good stuff to be able to pull that much data from an FCS school. I'm sure that was not easy to get. So well done, well done. All right, moving along. We'll talk a little Florida West here, or as I saw Dooley call them the other day, Florida A&M, which I enjoyed also very much. We'll take your pick, Florida A&M, Florida West, whatever you prefer. So moving right along. Win-loss from last year, 7-5. I sense a theme. That's 3 in a row. 4-4 in conference, also similar. An interesting stat I had to pull here, however. 0-4 on the road last season. Where's this game being played? Oh, Gainesville. Interesting. Okay. So moving on. Total offense last year for Florida West, 48th in the FBS at 406.9 yards per game. Very similar to Florida's number there. Scoring offense, 24th at 33.3 points per game. Pretty good considering their lack of yardage. It's kind of interesting. Total defense, 19th at 316.2 yards per game, and scoring defense, 34th at 22.08 points per game allowed. So interesting correlations there. Lower yards per game on offense with a higher scoring, lower yards allowed on defense, but also with a higher scoring. Interesting. Okay, moving along. Returning impact players for the Fighting Aggie-Gators. Okay, no, I'm just kidding.
Gators.
the impact players returning are, of course, first and foremost, quarterback Connor Wegman. Now, I will take a second here. I went way more in depth with the stats on this team. I did not pull the same number of stats for anybody else on the schedule besides these guys. I am more motivated to beat this team than probably any team on the schedule. Even Kentucky, as much as I want to beat Kentucky this year and not lose 4 in a row to them. But this one is big for me because of all of the stuff in the offseason. So I'm just calling that out right now. But that didn't influence my projection to win in this case. I'm just saying I went way more in depth on the stats with this one. I got sucked down the rabbit hole. So Connor Wegman, returning from injury, who threw for just under 1,000 yards in 4 games last season. That's not bad, right? About 250 a game on average. They also have linebacker Torian York, who had 74 tackles, 8.5 for loss, and 3 sacks last season at linebacker, which is not bad. Wide receiver Noah Thomas, who was the 3rd best performer on the team. However, the top 2 have left the team for various different reasons I'll get to. And defensive lineman Shamar Turner, who had 10.5 tackles for loss, 6 sacks, and 2 forced fumbles. Damn. That's pretty good. So he is by far and away their best defensive lineman, or was their best defensive lineman. Even though they had Walter Noel on the team, he was their most impressive stat-wise defensive lineman from last season, and he is returning. So impact transfers include 8 total 4-stars coming into the program. Just naming some of them: cornerback Will Lee, who had 42 tackles and 2 INTs with Kansas State. Nick Scorton, who led the Big Ten, in sacks, but also had 50 tackles, including 15 tackles for loss. However, Scooby is also rated as a 4-star. Pause. I would argue he's not, but we'll go from there. Additionally, they have lost 8 4-stars as well. So even though they gained 8 4-stars, they lost 8 4-stars, including Sam McCall, Jordan Matthews from the secondary, and 2 5-stars, including wide receiver Evan Stewart And of course, defensive lineman Walter Nolan, who was the biggest of them all, though Evan Stewart was pretty big too. So, having said all of that, we also have to examine, in this case, the coaching staff changes. Obviously, this is part of the reason why they are a big part of the reason why they are Florida West. We have Elko coming in to replace Jimbo. That obviously is not us. But then, of course, they took UF assistants Sean Spencer and Jay Bateman. So they are going to know things about us, the way we do things from a defensive standpoint. Certainly, is that something they can expose on offense? It is something we have to consider. All in all, Texas A&M maybe slightly plus on defense, but probably closer to neutral and definitely slightly worse on offense on paper. There's no question about it. They lost, without a doubt, some of their best receiving weapons, unquestionably, and their running back situation did not do anything to significantly improve. So it is hard to see where this team is better overall. And with it only being their third game with Elko at head coach and the new coaching staff and a new coaching system and everything else, I think UF is going to have the upper hand here and being more established, being more veteran, right, than the team that they're playing, more established in their system, everything else. In addition, I think we're going to have some venom coming into this game. However, I'm not going to discredit the fact that Spencer knows things that we do, that Jay Bateman knows things that we do defensively. It's not like scheme-wise they don't understand concepts and stuff that we're doing, right? Can they leverage that? Can they talk to their offensive guys about that and take advantage of some of those things? I can't rule that out. With all the coaches and players that are there, right, that gave us this Florida West nickname, I can't go higher than 62% Florida win on this one. I can't do it. I think Florida has the advantage, but I can't go more than 62%. That's where I'm at. What you got?
67%.
All right. I got you. I'm with it.
Just Fair enough. Leave it. I like the venom. Florida West, Texas A&M, Florida Gators, aggregators, whatever the hell you want to call it. Good luck. Just hey, just come ready, get laced up, and let's dance. Real simple.
Hey, they say Gig'em Aggies. Should we go Gaggies?
Gig'em Gaggies. Hey. I don't know. Is that what State Farm agents wear in Texas? Gaggies, not khakis. I don't know. I'm at a loss.
No, there's no Jake from State Farm here, so we're gonna move on. All right. Little old school Georgia joke there for those who know Jake Fromm. All right, moving along. Mississippi State, first road game of the season. Take us through it.
Here we go. And the famous words of my good friend Christopher Walken: "We need more cowbell."
More cowbell.
More cowbell, right? It never hurt anybody. Yes, it did actually. All right, so let's take a look at Mississippi State. Some interesting things happening in Starkville or Stark Vegas or whatever the hell they want to call it. Let's take a look at the overall record: 5-7. 5-7. Conference play: 1-7. Not very attractive. That's all right. Of that 5-7 record, 3 wins were against FCS opponents, very similar to Samford, what I just mentioned. Their big win, however, came early in the season last year. If those of you remember Upset Nation, that second week in the football season, they beat Arizona when Arizona was ranked number 11, when Arizona came into Starkville, and they beat them in overtime 31-24. So that was the big win last season. That was supposed to turn the ship around, this, that, and the other. Well, it just merely stalled. So let's get into some of the stats. Offensive points per game, 21.8, ranked 105th. Offensive yards per game, 328.6, number 101. Oh, and also sidebar, 5.26 yards per play. Not really an offensive juggernaut. Of course, Mike Leach is not there anymore. Rest in peace, Mike Leach.
Indeed, indeed.
Yeah. The other Mad Hatter, I guess technically that was Les Miles, but he likes deep grass. And anyways, not really an offensive juggernaut. Obviously, things will change a little bit this year with their new coach, which I'll get into here in a second. Let's look at the defensive side of the football. Defensive points per game, 26.58 points per game. That ranked number 66 in the FBS. And then defensive yards per game, 350.6, good for 5.33 yards per play, and number 40 in FBS. Away game, first true road game of the season in Starkville, listening to cowbell, seeing white and maroon. That'll be very interesting. New coach arrived on campus late in November. Coach Jeff Lebby. For those of you who might know that name as being familiar, he was the former Oklahoma offensive coordinator. He's got a lot of work to do. 4-year quarterback in the system, 3 years as a starter. Will Rogers is no longer in Starkville. He's entered the transfer portal. Here's another big deficiency that they had. Linebackers, Nate Watson, Jet Johnson. Get this tandem here at linebacker, they combined for 267 tackles last year. 267 tackles.
Wow. Last year?
In 2023.
Wow.
They both had the lion's share of tackles in the trenches for Mississippi State.
And they're gone?
And they're gone.
Wow.
Right? Defensive back, Decameron Richardson and Sean Preston Jr., 3-year starters. One gone for graduation, one gone into the portal. Gone. Their overall transfer class, number 36. Okay? So as I mentioned earlier, a 4-year guy, Will Rogers, a staple in Starkville at the QB position. What do? So Jeff Lebby, offensive-minded coach, offensive coordinator at Oklahoma. What does he do? He goes into the portal and he gets Blake Shapen from Baylor. So Blake Shapen, pretty decent arm. 27 games at Baylor, 5,575 career yards, 36 touchdowns across 27 games. Not terrible. Their running back core, very stable. Their combo of Pittman and Lee, which was kind of like our Johnson, very, very stable coming back. Their wide receivers, Kevin Coleman and Kelly Agkari. There we go. 1,033 receiving yards for Kelly, ranked number 19th in FBS for 2023, and had 7 touchdowns. Did a very good job over there in UTEP. He comes over in the portal, and then just mentioned Kevin Coleman, 36 receptions, 362 yards for not Louisville, Lowell. For those of you who know how to pronounce it correctly, the 2022 SWAC Freshman of the Year. Okay, somebody knows SWAC. He knows it. He was a Freshman of the Year. At the tight end position, they lost a kid to the portal and lost another one to graduation. But they are replenishing the tight end position with the Ball brothers. One coming from Buffalo. Yes, the Bills up there again being mentioned. Second shout out to the Buffalo Bills. And then Vanderbilt. The one Ball brother from Buffalo started 11 games last year. The other Ball brother started 12 games in 2023 and was a staple for Vanderbilt in a third down situation. Right? They need to get the football off. Outside of that, offensive line, they lost 3 players to graduation / portal. They had 4 additions. Okay. You have McKalen Porters, 2021 top prospect. He was pursued actually by Mississippi State before, Ole Miss, Tennessee, and they gained also a tackle and a guard coming from LSU and Texas Tech. The LSU, this was a really simple situation, was not going to get playing time. He felt like coming up in 24, a 3-star guard. He comes down, and then Texas Tech, he had another year of eligibility, wanted a little bit more exposure, leaving Texas Tech, of course, for the SEC. Some of their big deficiencies: defensive line, defensive back. Lebby already went on record saying we've got a lot of rebuilding to do there. And then outside of that, in the linebacker position, they've got 3 starters returning, And then a really good staple, Stone Blanton. Those of you might remember that name. He started 12 games for South Carolina last year. So that's what we're looking at with Mississippi State. So based off all those factors, I'm looking at new coach, new system, new QB, defensive deficiencies, what's going to happen on the defensive side of the football. On that basis, I'm going to put our chances to win at 80%. B.
Wow, in a road game?
In a road game in Starkville, Stark Vegas, I've got us at 80.
So I have to ask a question here. Would you say on paper that the team is better or not than last year?
Neutral.
Neutral to last year, but with obviously a more offensive-minded coach. Give me 70. Give me 74. What'd you say? Sorry.
Only because of the first year in that system and trying to adapt a QB that came from Baylor and the strength of schedule there. That's all.
Yeah, no, I get that. Give me 74%.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, I like the chances, certainly. I think talent-wise, we definitely have a significant edge based on everything that you're saying there. And, again, new coach. A lot of new coach themes here, huh? That is one positive on the schedule that I'm seeing. Here's another fun fact. Did you notice that you said 5-7? So that's a losing record by one game.
Yes.
You know how many of those we have on the schedule next year?
I believe that's 4.
It's that one. It's that one. It's that one. That's the only one. That's the only team that didn't go to a bowl game last year that we're playing.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Everybody else was 500 or above that was on our schedule, and only one team was 500. Everybody else was above 500 in the regular season that we're playing. So just another little fun fact about the difficulty of this schedule. So moving along, next team, UCF. I might have lied about only one team being 500. There might have been two. There were two. I apologize. There were two. There were 500. But still, only one losing record. Okay. So the following week from Mississippi State, we have a bye. This is important. We're not going to talk about the bye. That's obviously not an opponent, but we are going to talk about the fact that we have a bye. One, because we have 2 byes next year. But secondly, because it gives us a bye before we come back home to play UCF. And that's significant because it's that extra week of prep. And that may very well come into play when we start talking about some of various different things of the opponents within the season. And I think it definitely factors into chances of winning this game versus UCF. So just wanted to throw that out there. So UCF, the national champions of 2013 or whatever the heck year it was, 2009. I don't remember when they did that. We'll move on. They were 6-6 last year, 3-6 in the Big 12, their first year moving into a Power 5 conference and out of the AAC, I believe was the correct conference they were in. Total offense, they were 8th. That's right, 8th in the FBS. Top 10 in the FBS at 487 yards per game. Scoring offense, 41st at 31.3. Wait, what? Yeah, you heard me right. 8th in total yards, 41st in scoring. Well, whoops. That doesn't really correlate, does it? So they moved the ball a lot and didn't get it in the end zone. So that is important when we look at this. Not that 31.3 is a terrible number. It's better than we were, but when you look at the yards per game number, it's kind of disappointing. So defense, 81st in the FBS at 391 yards per game. Whoopsies. However, on the positive side, 59th in scoring defense at 25.77. So again, they allowed a ton of yards, but didn't allow teams to get in the end zone as often comparatively to the yards given up. It's still not great. It's not top 50, right? So, but just something to keep in mind. So very good offensively, as you would expect a Gus Malzahn team to be. Not so hot defensively when we look at that talent. So key returning players: defensive end Malachi Lawrence, wide receiver Kobe Hudson, safety Demarius Henderson, and running back RJ Harvey, who had over 1,400 yards last season and 16 touchdowns. Whoa. Hello. Yeah, that guy can move the rock. So RJ Harvey's one we got to look out for. Can anybody say Ray Davis? Yikes. I'm a little worried there. Impact transfers to be familiar with include a familiar face in quarterback KJ Jefferson. Clause for effect there, Arkansas quarterback from last season. Additionally, they have 3 other 4-star additions as well, being running back Penny Boone, cornerback Traquan Fagans, and the aforementioned edge rusher Najalik Kelly. And I apologize if I'm not pronouncing that correctly. It could be Najalik. I'm really not sure. From Miami. So as I said, a couple of those Miami transfers are going to show up on other teams. Here's one of them. Departures consist of 1 former Gator 5-star in Demarcus Bowman, who really has not lived up to that ranking as of yet at all, as well as 3 4-stars in cornerback Fred Davis II, defensive lineman Dallas Corbett, and linebacker Xavier Carter. Additionally, their leading tackler from last season, Jason Johnson, and top pass catcher Javon Baker have gone on to the NFL along with their starting quarterback Reese Plumlee. So these are things of significance. Lost their starting quarterback in a top 10 offense, lost their best wide receiver in a top 10 offense, and lost their leading tackler in a sub top 80 defense. So hard to see how this on paper losing their lead tackler, lead pass catcher, and starting QB. It just is, right? It's hard to see how that would work. And as much as Malzahn is very dangerous and crafty and everything else, he's made some nice additions here. And the recruiting has been better than expected at UCF since he's been there. But I don't see where this is a team that's better than a season ago. I just don't. And again, you have a game in the swamp, right? We have to point this out. I also like, as mentioned, the extra week of prep coming off the bye. Having said that, Malzahn is crafty and should not be underestimated. Gators' chance to win, 73%. What you got?
Nice. Like it. Yeah, there's a lot of musical chairs when it comes to some of these players. I've got it. 2 points over you, my friend. I'm at 70%.
You're what? You broke up. Sorry, you're at 70 what percent?
Sorry, I'm 2 points ahead of you at 75%.
Okay.
The Gators keeping down on the Golden Knights.
I like it. We're closest we've been aligned yet. Good stuff. I think we're very in sync on that one. All right, moving on. Rocky Top, take us through Tennessee.
Ooh, this is a tough one. By the way, so what I'm hearing you say, and yes, I've concurred. We're 5-0.
Well, I mean, in theory. I mean, I've got at least 2 games in the 60s. So I mean those are not locks by any stretch of the imagination. But yeah, the possibility of 5-0 is certainly there for sure.
The possibility is out there.
Okay, again, we're not making picks. These are just chances to win. So the probability I have of us winning is favoring 5-0. How about that?
Oh, very good. My apologies on the misuse of the vernacular. Okay, here we go. Let's go to Tennessee. Let's go to Rocky Top, literally and figuratively. All right, so last year, Tennessee, overall, 8-4. Conference play, 4-4. Let's look at their offensive production. 31.8 points per game, number 36 in the FBS. Offensive yards per game, hypo-based offense, similar to Malzahn. You guessed it, 448 yards per game at a rate of 6.48 yards a play, ranked for number 19th. Let's look at the defensive side of the football. Defensive points per game given up 20.31, good for number 22 in the FBS. And then defensive yards per game allowed, 335.2, at a clip of 4.97 yards a play, good enough for number 32 in the FBS. All right, so this game, it is at Rocky Top. It is going to be an interesting environment, but let's take a look at some additions. Let's take a look at the losses. We'll go from there. Chris Brazzell, wide receiver coming out of Tulane, 3-star guy, lengthy guy, tall guy, 6'5", arms for days. can catch the high ball. Keenan Peel. This guy was a transfer from BYU, the middle linebacker. Last year, he only played one game and suffered a triceps tear. He's
Hold
going
on.
to be back.
Did you just say Keenan Peel?
I did say Keenan Peel.
Oh, no. You said Keenan Peel, not Keenan Peel. So this isn't a Comedy Central special. I was just checking.
It is not. It is not. Keenan Peel, a big Samoan man, big tribal tattoo on the arm. You can't miss him. You can't. He looks like Maui.
All right. I just had to
All
clarify.
Right. Oh, yeah. So the other thing that is going to be really tough for Tennessee is I'm going to go into their starting secondary. They lost their entire starting secondary, right, to graduation and to transfers. McCullough graduated.
The entire starting secondary?
Starting secondary, correct.
Wow.
Correct. The other thing, you might remember this name, Brew McCoy. Does that ring a bell?
Yeah, a little bit.
Little bit. So hopefully, let me rephrase that. We'll see how healthy he is. My sources at Tennessee say he's extremely healthy and geared up for his senior season. Okay. So the other thing to note is what they've gone through from a personnel standpoint, the changes, right? So Joe Milton, they left for the draft. A lot of people are saying, even though Joe Milton had a cannon and this and that, he couldn't read a defense to save his life. And that's why they believe Nico Imalaviea is going to be a much better version of the quarterback that Heupel needs. If you notice, 2 seasons ago, they threw a lot over the middle, across the middle. If you notice with Milton, their games last year, they didn't really throw across the middle. Heupel believes he can go across the middle again with Nico. So that's going to be key. Running back is interesting because their main guy, Wright, he was lost to the NFL, the draft, correct, so Dolphins. So that's going to be a big area. They've got Dylan Sampson. He's their main guy right now. He was the backup to Wright. He's going to get the majority of the touches this fall. However, when you look at it from a depth standpoint, outside of that, they've got Small, who came over in the portal, but he only came over as a 2-star. So we'll see what happens there. Both tight ends gone. Graduation, transfer. They brought in Holden States. He was the number 1 tight end in the portal. For those of you who might remember that name, he came from Notre Dame. Sorry, was a poet, didn't even know it. A strength for them is going to be their D line. So, B, you and I have talked about this. When it comes to SEC football, experience in the trenches matter. And on their D line, they are returning 5, and they have 12 deep. They have 6 fifth-year seniors along that D line, and one of the biggest names returning, James Pierce, who can wreak some havoc.
He's a monster.
He is a monster.
We contained him really well last year, but
we really did. Agree. And arguably our best all-around game last year.
Certainly our best offensive line game, without question.
Without question, agreed. O-line returners. Cooper Mays is the glue behind that line. Center, he makes the entire line stable. And they also have a transfer tackle that came from LSU simply because he was not going to get playing time this fall. So that's going to be very, very big deal. That's going to be Lance Hurd, the left guard. So guard and tackle is also going to be replaced there. So that's huge. Their linebacker coach went to Michigan because he's great friends with Sharon Moore, the new head coach at Michigan. Get this, as a linebacker coach, they're paying him just shy over $1 million a year. That's a pretty good deal to be a linebacker coach. They have a new running back coach that came in from Cincinnati. So here's the main thing with Tennessee. It is Rocky Top. It is Heupel. Okay. Couple things. A, the safety position and their starting secondary. Big deficiency. 2, quarterback. Milton, gone. Imalaviea, in. true dual threat, a little bit more talent, a bit more speed. We'll see about the arm. 3, the running back core, no depth, right? With Dylan Sampson getting the majority of the carries, is his body, is he ready for that? 4, D line, that's going to be their biggest strength, biggest strength. And then number 5, the offensive line, as far as who they have returning, as well as the 2 additions, that's going to be their main support in making sure Imalavier is protected. It is Rocky Top. I think Heupel's going to come back better than ever, knowing that he's got some intangibles in Imalavier that he did not have with Milton. With respect to Joe Cannon, whatever. Right now, I give our Gators a 40% chance to win in those 5 factors that I just mentioned, seeing that Tennessee is a little bit better than neutral on paper. That's what I got, B.
Wow. Fantastic analysis. Really, really good stuff. Love the takes, love the in-depth work there. Really gives me a lot of thought there. So the take I would have here is I loved how we defended Tennessee last year. I know that we had corners get beat at times. Sometimes that burned us. Sometimes it didn't because Milton missed throws. I'm not sure if Nico will or not if we do that again, but I don't really necessarily anticipate us doing that again this year. I think the corners are going to play better. I think they are better. I think they will play better. And the way we defend this team using that tight front, that 3 down linemen, 2 linebacker setup to defend the middle of the field against their run and really shut down their interior run game that they like to use even with the spread is a fantastic defensive front to use against Tennessee. I think it's one of the better schemed games that Armstrong had all last season, though he had several that I actually thought scheme-wise were quite good, but this was maybe one of the best. I like the way we played this team on both sides of the ball last year. I don't see any reason we can't do that again from an execution and from a game plan standpoint. The difference is it's in Rocky Top. And to your point, there are some things that are up for them. However, hearing that about the secondary, which I did not know, is really interesting. I am going to just dip below you and say 39. I'm right there with you though. This is we have a shot to win this game for sure. And I really want to be right there with you at 40. I'm just going to take it a hair under because it's hard. It is harder to win at Rocky Top. Heupel's offense is very good, and they are going to score some. And I don't know if we can score quite enough, especially with that dominant D line. This is going to really come down to can our O line play really well again, and keep Mertz protected and let us run the ball for enough to keep the ball and hold on to it, not like we did last year, but enough to keep them from, being able to get too many points on the board. That's really what this game is going to come down to. But I like our chances here to be able to win this, even though we're not favoring it, because it's really hard to do that on the road in a hostile environment against a good team, right? But there's a chance in this game for sure. So I'm going 39, but I love your 40, and I could be right there with you. Really, really nice job.
Cool. Thank you. Had some help from a client who's a Tennessee faithful, so I'll just leave it.
Nice, good stuff. I like it. All right, moving on. Heading back home to face the Wild Kitties of Kentucky. God, I hate losing to this team. Okay. This is the second biggest game on the schedule for me this year. And I know this sounds silly because we have obviously much bigger games from a matchup standpoint, but there are two wins I want this season more than any other wins, and it's Florida West and Kentucky. I'm not saying I don't care if we go 2-10, because I obviously do, but if we get these two, man, I'll be a happy camper. So moving along. Win-loss from last year, 6-6, 3-5 in the SEC. Very similar performance to our team, actually, despite them beating us. If we had to flip the game with them, we would have been 6-6. We would have been better in the SEC, but we would have been 6-6, and they would have been 5-7, like we should have been. But let's move along. Okay, total offense, 98th in the FBS, 98th at only 339.5 yards per game. Sorry, not good at all. However, somehow scoring offense was 56th at 29.1 yards per game, or 29.1 points per game. What? How? I don't know. I don't get it. Whatever. Moving along. Total defense, 43rd at 353.5 yards per game, but scoring defense 60th at 25.85 points per game. Huh? Okay. Whatever. This is Kentucky, folks. You figure it out. Moving on. Returning impact players, including leading wide receivers, Dane Key and Barian Brown. So they get their best two starting wide receivers back, as well as their leading tackler, which is linebacker De'Aaron Jackson, who's very, very good. Their linebackers are excellent. They also get their edge rusher J.J. Weaver back, who is outstanding as well, and defensive tackle Deon Walker, who is also very good. Additionally, Maxwell Harrison returns in the secondary, who had 5 picks last season. So defensively, they come back very strong, and they get their 2 leading wide receivers back. Impact transfers include quarterback Brock Vandergriff, who was a standout recruit from Georgia who transferred very weirdly. That was quite an odd one. Wide receiver Jamari McClain, and Raymond Cottrell Jr. So they picked up more wide receiver talent through the portal. They also got Jamin Dumas Johnson as a transfer, also from UGA. Should we start calling them Georgia West? I don't know. I'm not sure. Anyway, however, the Cats lost Ray Davis. Thank you, God. No more Ray Davis. We don't have to see Ray Davis in any uniform, be it Vanderbilt, Kentucky, he gone. So no more Ray Davis. Thank you, Lord, because we just can't tackle that guy. And that's great. Along with 4 other 4-stars to the portal, consisting of wide receiver Dekel Crowdis, linebacker Luke Fulton, running back Juton McLean, and offensive tackle Grant Bingham. Probably the most significant one of those is Grant Bingham, because one of the things that Kentucky has been lacking in for a long time there, they had that big blue wall right up front. They really did a great job on the offensive line, right? They were really doing good things there, and that has declined over the past few years. So losing a 4-star blue chip offensive lineman, not good, right? That's not going to help them because their offensive line talent has declined, and here we go losing another offensive guy, and they did not replace him anywhere in the portal that I could find. And I don't know that they really have, another recruit or anything else that's going to kind of fill those shoes at some point. Now, I'm not saying they don't have any other talent on the line, certainly, but it's not the O-line that it used to be, which in theory should make them a little more suspect for some penetration from our improved D-line, improved linebackers, so on and so forth. However, having said that, on paper, they do look improved on offense, certainly, considering the upgrade at QB that they have, because their QB from last year was god-awful. And their receivers are obviously coming back for another season and are very good. But they won't have the same ability to run. We just talked about no real upgrade there in offensive line talent, and certainly the running back is not who he was. Thank you, Lord, again. Defensively, there's nothing that really looks stronger on paper other than, they get some returning talent that was good last year. I mean, it will be good again, but it's not going to be better. But it's Stoops, and Stoops is never going to not put a good defense on the field, right? And they seem to have this innate ability to defend Florida since he's been there. They've just been kind of this Achilles heel, right? We haven't blown Kentucky out in a long time. And for the record, I don't anticipate that we would this year, even assuming that we do win. However, we have no reason to lose 4 in a row, especially not one at home. And despite my desire to win this game, as objectively as I can possibly pick it, I have the odds at 66%. What do you got?
Wow. Nice. I like it. So, a couple things. Yes, it's at the Swamp. Yes, we don't want Kentucky to start their own 31 game win streak.
No thanks. No thanks. They've already started it. Let's be clear.
Precisely. That should be homecoming, October 19th.
Yep. Big deal. Good call. It is homecoming. You're right. Good call.
Right? Okay, yeah, because then we've got the bye. Okay, so what was your percentage again, B?
66.
Okay, so that was a little bit closer than I anticipated. I've got you by a point, 67.
I like it. We're coming more in line here as we get more into the schedule. I dig it.
Yeah.
Good deal. All right, and as you said, we have another bye, but of course Georgia will as well, because we always both have a bye before this game, so this one is less significant. Now, in fairness, I don't know if UCF has a bye before our game, but I don't believe that they do, but I'd have to look at their schedule to know for sure. But of course, Georgia will have a bye like we have a bye. So now take us through the cocktail party.
Yeah. Here's Georgia, right? The cocktail party, whatever you call it, November the 2nd, or as I like to call Georgia, ULIC, and that stands for University of Lack of Institutional Control, down there in
Oh
You like that? Okay.
man,
Sorry.
that is hilarious. It's the 06 to 09 Gators all over again, man. Jeez.
I'm telling you, there were gator tails, swamp tails. There's probably going to be, dog tails in 2037 is when dog tails are going to
Dog pound, man.
dog pound. There you go. All right. So Georgia, what is left to say about the UGA? Conference play 8-0, overall 12-0. Yes, as Ben mentioned earlier, we're just doing the regular season. No need to talk about playoffs, postseason, so on and so forth. Let's look at the offensive numbers. Points per game, 40.1, 40.1. Good for number 5 in FBS. Offensive yards per game, 496.5. Good for number 5 in FBS, a 5 and a 5. Solid. Let's go to the defensive side of football. We've got 15.64 points per game allowed. Again, number 5 in FBS.
That's unreal.
Exactly. Then defensive side of the football, as far as yards allowed, 289.1 at a clip of 4.77 per play. Hey, they're not in the top 5. They're in the top 10. So defensive yards per game is number 9 in FBS.
Top 10 in every category. Wow.
Right? So here's the thing. It's in Jacksonville, Everbank Stadium, Field, whatever the heck you want to call it. Yes, I did say University of Lack of Institutional Control. That was one I just had to come up with off the cuff, just knowing that there's been some extracurricular activities with Georgia. Again, we can't throw stones in a glass house. We know we've had those issues as well, but I think some more things are going to come down the pipeline here as the years go on. Having that been said, let's look at their key losses from last fall. A guy by the name of Brock Bowers, you might have known him, went number 13th overall to the Raiders, right, the tight end. Amarius Mims went 18th overall, offensive tackle to the Bengals. Amari Lassiter, big name there, went 42nd overall, cornerback to the Texans, and he was a 2-year, 3-year starter there at 34th, Ladd McConkey.
Yeah.
Good old Ladd himself, wide receiver. He went to the Chargers.
After Ricky, but yeah.
After Ricky. You know what? You read my mind. Well said. I don't have to say it because you already said it. 58th overall, you got Jerron Bullard, the defensive back. He went to the Texans. 89th, Tyke Smith. Tyke Smith was a wrecking ball at DB. Struggled through some injuries last year. He went 89th overall to the Bucks. 8 draft picks in total, down from 10 in 2023 and 15 in 2022. So UGA is seeming a little bit more pedestrian for what that's worth. Let's go to some of the additions / returns. Carson Beck. Truth be told, Carson Beck, you look at the offensive efficiencies there. Yes, that had a lot to do with their offensive coordinator, but at the same time, I just got to tip my hat to Carson Beck. He just went in, he did his job, went about his business, and he held his own as a true freshman.
Yeah, he's pretty good, man.
He is pretty good. So that's all I've got to say about that. In the running back room, they picked up somebody by the name of Trevor Etienne. I'm not sure if that name rings a bell to people. He has 2 years of eligibility left a good situation, but that is okay. Dewan Edwards, their main back from last season, went to the draft, but he was undrafted. I think he still remains unsigned. 22 players overall signed in the 2024 class, ranked first nationally. Go figure. KJ Bolden, probably one of their biggest additions, if not the biggest addition on defense. That was their last minute flip that they had. He's going to see, allegedly, according to a UGA source, he's going to see significant playing time this fall. He's that good. They just picked up another guy through the portal. This guy might have some familiarity with Gator Nation, a name that might be, a little bit sore, but Jalen Rashada by way of Arizona State University. So he's going to be backing up Mr. Carson Beck. From the DB,
he left a starting job to go to Georgia to be a backup.
Bingo.
It's wild. I mean, maybe he plays next year or 2 years. I don't remember if Beck's a sophomore or a junior this season. I think
he's a true sophomore. Yeah.
Really? Wow. So he's not even going to play next year. That's crazy.
It is. It really is. And he left, $13.4 million or $11.6 million or $14, whatever ASU had on the table. Who knows? In the DB room, very stacked. Very, very stacked. In the cornerback room, they are going to be replenished very, very well. Not to mention Landon Humphreys, they just got from Vandy. Great transfer there for them in the system. When you look at the tight end position, there's no drop off there. Yeah, they lose Brock Bowers, but guess what? Delp has proven to be a true weapon. Not to mention, Delp has literally has been Bowers' shadow for the past 2 years. And not to mention, they get Urasek. He was a transfer, arguably up there, top 5 tight end that came over from Stanford. The guys. So here's my other source from UGA. Here's the thing about that. A lot of the guys that left, they left for either more playing time or for some money. That's it. So take that for what it's worth. And yes, I do apologize. Beck, last year I thought he was a true freshman, but he's going to be a redshirt junior. So yeah, that is confirmed. Their weakest position. If Georgia has a weak position, guess where it is? D-line. That's it. They had to go to the portal to rebuild some of that D-line because what we talked about in SEC play, experience matters when it comes to the line. And when you look at what we went up against, our offense went up against last year, it was redshirt senior, redshirt junior, and senior. So that's what they had to replenish on that D-line. And so right now, when you look at their logistics, D-line is going to be their biggest opportunity to rebuild this year. Outside of that, with Carson Beck returning, with their running back core not really changing, yes, it's going to be a strength. We're going to see if ETN is suspended for the first game of the season, maybe first or second game. Maybe not. We'll see. We'll also see.
How do you not suspend him at least a game, dude? How do you not suspend him at least a game? Like, what the hell?
Hey, man. ULIC, University of Lack of Institutional Control. So
that's ridiculous.
I'm just saying. Having that been said,
it's just a Dewey. Don't worry about it. Like what?
Yeah, no big deal. No big deal. It's not like you had another member of the football team involved in an accident that killed a staffer. Sorry, I went there. I know. I apologize.
Yeah, no, it is what it is. It's a fact.
But having said all that, I'm not going to prolong this analysis. Here's the biggest thing. I still don't think we are there in closing the talent gap, if that makes sense. So on that basis, I'm giving us a 20. And here's the thing. I want us to be fired up because of ETN, and I want us to be fired up because of the cans of whoop ass that have been opened up on us the past couple of years. But right now I have our chances at 25%.
Yeah, I think that's probably a little generous, honestly, because you're right. We haven't. We have closed the talent gap slightly. The talent on our roster is much better than it was 2 years ago when the talent gap was wider than the Grand Canyon. It's now where the Grand Canyon was in width 50 million years ago, which is not much different for those who know geology, right? It's pretty much the same, just slightly narrower. So, it's not a big difference, but we have narrowed it just a little bit. It is getting better, but not much, and not enough, and not even close to enough, quite frankly. We have got to do significantly more work to get in even the hemisphere of being a top 10 team in every one of those metrics you just came into. Hell, we're not a top 30 team in any of these metrics that we're going through last season. I hope to be a top 30 team in at least one of them, maybe two this season. However, we're not going to be a top 10 team probably in any of them. So this is a top 10 team in all of them. Let's reiterate that. That's how good they are, and they don't show any weaknesses of being any more deficient on paper this season with the recruits and transfers and everything else that they brought in. They just, again, they don't rebuild, they reload, right? And, it's a common expression, but it's the truth. It's what Bama's done for years. It's what Georgia started to do in these past few seasons, and it is what it is, and I'm putting the number at 20. That's where it's at. It's because it's a rivalry game, because we know the coaches, because we know the staff, because we know how these guys play, and because of some of the motivational factor I think will be in play versus ETN and all of those things, I'll give us 20. And frankly, that's a roundup. I'm being generous. I'm factoring in things because of the rivalry game, because of those elements, because of neutral site. The chances wouldn't be this high if this game were in Georgia, for example, not even close. And I would not put it much higher even if it were in the Swamp, quite frankly. So maybe another 5 points and that's it. I might have it at 25 like you did if it were in the Swamp, for example. So, I mean, at the end of the day, this is not a game we should look to win. It's just not. I'm sorry. It is what it is. Mark it up as an L chance-wise. It's just not going to be one that we would have to have freaky stuff go our way multiple times to even have a shot at this thing. And that's what it comes down to. Having said that, let's go on to another game where that exact same thing is going to be true. And in fact, this might even be a better opponent than Georgia on paper. And yes, I said it. Their stats aren't as good, but man, their talent level, buddy, it's nasty. Okay, let's talk about it. Obviously, this was a college football playoff team last year, as I could argue Georgia probably should have been, but we'll leave that alone. Win-loss record 11-1, 8-1 in the Big 12. Total offense 9th in the FBS at 477.5 yards per game. Scoring offense was 15th at 35.8 points per game. Total defense, little Big 12 number here, 34th at 336.7 yards per game. But their scoring defense was 15th at 18.93 points per game. So very important there. They gave up a little more Big 12-y kind of number in yards, meaning even one of the better Big 12 teams, a little higher yardage, but they didn't crack around the goal line. Good red zone defense, very important. Returning impact players include 4 starters on the O-line from last season. I'll say that again. They returned 4 of 5 starters on their O-line. Yikes. That's never good. That is never good. Anthony Hill Jr. also returns at linebacker, who was College Football Network's freshman linebacker of the year. Ooh. Yikes. Half of the running back tandem from last season, in that of CJ Baxter, the other half went pro, but they were a nasty little tandem. And their sack leader from last season in defensive end Ethan Burke, though he only totaled 5.5 sacks. So this was not a high sack ratio team last year, much like we were not. So that is something to point out. And then, of course, they bring back Quinn Ewers, who's, a little good. He was more than impressive last season and just looks to build on that this year. So that's why I'm saying that on paper this team is really, really good, and it gets worse. So on top of all that, they added 5 4-stars in the transfer portal and a 5-star, the most significant of which, I'm not even going to name them all, but it's edge rusher Trey Moore, tight end Amari Niblack, I apologize again on pronunciation, And of course, standout wide receiver Isaiah Bond from Alabama, who is going to be a monster weapon for Ewers. It is scary combination, not good at all. So Texas did lose a bunch of wide receivers to the draft, obviously. Two of very high significance that were one was a first rounder, the Chiefs, of course, with his ridiculous 40 time. The name eludes me off the top of my head. I apologize, but they have replaced their receiver talent in spades through both their recruiting ranks and then, of course, this transfer of Bond, who is going to be just ridiculous. They did, however, lose 24 players in the portal in the offseason. Now, most teams lost somewhere in the 20s, so it's not unheard of to lose that number. But it should be noted that linebacker Kendrick Blackshear and an additional 3 4-star prospects in cornerback Terrence Brooks, cornerback Austin Jordan, and running back Darian Brown also left, all 4 stars. The interesting thing is there 2 cornerbacks left. We know their secondary was already a weakness for this team if it had one defensively, which it did. So that is something to keep in mind. So again, I'll start with clearly Texas's weak link was their defense. If they had a weak link, right, that was their weakness, and particularly that came in the form of pass defense. So losing 2 high-end quarterbacks from their recruiting class or from their ranks, if you will, it can't be helpful. However, they're still an extremely potent offense. They're still a decent defense. Their D line is impressive. Their linebackers are good, especially the one that they return. And they will be more than a handful, and frankly, more than UF can contain or contend with at this point, especially on the road. 17%.
Wow. Well, I'm going to bring that up. 3 points. First of all, good stats. Well, not good stats to our favor, but well said. Outside of that, I'm going to bring you 3 points. And I'm sorry, bring you down 2 points. Say 15.
Fair enough. That's only 2 points, but still, I'll take it. I think that's fair. 15 is, yeah. I mean, we're not winning this game. I mean, if we had to have a lot of freak stuff go right to beat Georgia, we got to have even more freak stuff right to beat Texas at Texas. I mean, this is just not one we're winning. Is what it comes down to. The percentage here is very, very slim.
Yeah.
It just is what it is. So anyway, moving on. LSU. Let's talk about it. Back in the swamp.
Go back in the swamp. Okay, LSU, whatever you want to call it. Okay,
LSU,
great.
baby.
Right. Overall record 2023. We have 9-3. Conference record 6-2. Let's get into the numbers. Probably no surprise to anybody. Offensive points per game, 45.5. Where did that rank? Oh yeah, number one. Offensive yards per game, 543.5. I wonder where that ranked. Oh yeah, number one. Let's go to the defensive side of the football. This is one of the biggest discrepancies I've ever seen. I just want to preface this. Points per game, 15.64, for a rank of number 5. Defense yards per game, 416.6 at a clip of 6.14 per yard per play. Where did that rank? 105.
That's crazy. How is that possible?
How is that possible? No stinking clue outside of we're going to give up a crap ton of yardage, but when it really matters, we're going to stop them. We're going to kick them, leave them to either kick a field goal, go for it on 4th down, get a turnover, whatever the case might be. So we give up a ton of yardage, bulk yardage, but yet we get our act together when it really matters. We stop them on 3rd down, whatever. I don't know. But
I think the going for it on 4th down might have had a lot to do with it. Teams felt pressured to score touchdowns and not field goals because they knew what they were up against. I wonder if that didn't have a lot to do with it.
I tried to get some other analytics on that, but couldn't really find it outside of the fact that as a team, you're looking at LSU, 14 team interceptions last year. That ranked pretty high. So outside of that, maybe teams have to go for it, right?
Okay. That's a good stat too. Nice.
Right. So home versus away, we're at the swamp. hopefully the home crowd will be able to generate some activity there. Let's talk about some additions and losses. Let's start with losses. Jaden Daniels, he was the Heisman Trophy winner, I believe.
Was he?
Malik, yeah, I think so. Malik Neighbors, first round pick, wide receiver. Brian Thomas Jr., wide receiver.
First round pick.
I'm just going to throw this out there. Jaden Daniels, Malik Neighbors, Brian Thomas Jr. B, I'm going to ask you a question. I'm not trying to set you up. What percent of the offense do you think these three accounted for in LSU's offense in 2023? Percentage of offensive production.
68.
Very good, my friend. Very close. 72.
Oh, man, I almost said 72. That was really close to saying that. I moved it down. That's funny.
You moved it down? 72%, according to the numbers, that's what they accounted for in their offense last year. And
that's
you
why
lose.
They went 2, 6, and 23 in the draft. Those are the respective numbers.
Winner, winner, chicken tetrazzini dinner. Yes. So when you look at that, right, the other big loss is going to be offensive coordinator Mike Denbrock. We had a swap between Indiana and Baton Rouge. Denbrock took the OC position at Notre Dame. Okay, whatever, cool. It's a swoop and a swap. So that is what it is. So they're going to start over from OC in fall of 24. The other way they're going to start over is with QB. Now, here's the thing. Garrett Nussmeier, he had chances to transfer in 22 and 23, but he stuck around. He came to Baton Rouge in 21. He stuck around for his shot, and guess what? Now he's got a shot. Third-year QB. He's worked with QB coach Joe Sloan for the past few years, so he's familiar with Joe. Joe's familiar with him. And Joe Sloan, of course, gets the promotion to offensive coordinator after the departure of Denbrock. So that is what it is. They have a two-headed monster, Williams and Jackson, returning at the running back position. Their O-line, their average grade out or class at O-line grades out to be redshirt junior. So there's depth at O-line, there's depth at running back. They have 20 newcomers to the roster. So look at this from a transfer portal ad standpoint. Gilbert, three-star safety, Texas A&M, Florida West. Thomas, wide receiver, three-star, Mississippi State. Swan, Vandy, QB, two-star, backup. The biggest one to make impact, and I know we had talked about this in the transfer portal pod.
Yeah, it's the Liberty guy.
Wide receiver from Liberty. Yes, that's going to be their biggest impact. Will he replace a Neighbors and Brian Thomas Jr.? I don't think so, but either way, he's got the skill set to be able to do that. Jalen Brown, cornerback out of Ohio State, three-star. Austin Osbury, defensive back out of Auburn. Nothing too spectacular. Kelly said back on 429, the main area that he's worried about is defensive tackle. At defensive tackle. So we'll see what happens there.
Interesting.
Yeah. Outside of that, we've got here's the thing, folks. We have a 5-game losing streak against LSU. But they're reloaded on offense. They had to reload. New coordinator, new-ish QB, maybe not used to the SEC setting. I try not to look at this with orange and blue goggles. I like our chances in the swamp. I like our retooling. On paper, LSU does not look better. They're not neutral. They're not better. They're worse because of the losses of Daniels, Neighbors, and Thomas Jr.
Yeah, that's a lot to replace for sure.
A lot to replace. 72% of your offense, offensive production. Sorry. On that basis, I give our Gators a 51% chance.
Wow, I like it. I like it. I have a question. You didn't talk too much about defensive movement. On paper, is the defense improved, even if it's just because of, increased experience?
Increased experience, yes, but I'd have to give the defense a neutral grading.
Okay, so no real impact transfers
That
or
is correct.
significant movement in that regard.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Yeah, this is a super coin flippy game. Man, we competed with them for 3 quarters in LSU with a talent deficient team and a defense that was giving up ridiculous yards per play to an offense that was generating ridiculous yards per play, right? So you had the perfect storm there for us, right? And we still competed for 3 quarters. I'm actually gonna go 52%. I'm gonna say home field advantage in this. And hearing what you said, I would not have, if you had not run through all that and given me all that intel, I would not have known to or felt to do that. But I feel like with hearing all of that and knowing those factors and just looking at this from as objective a lens as I can, if it was a neutral site, 47%. But I got to give that 5% swing to the home field crowd. The swamp has an impact. For me, it's a 5% impact pretty much regardless, unless you're talking about like some kind of juggernaut team coming in. 52. I like it. That's good stuff. That's a better chance in that game than I would have thought. Now we'll see what happens with this new OC and how the season develops. Obviously, things can change. We're just evaluating on paper for now. But man, I think we're slightly better odds to win that game, and definitely better than I would have thought. Cool. All right, next up, again at home, Ole Miss. This is an interesting game. Last year they were 10-2, 6-2 in the SEC. In total offense, they were 13th in the FBS at 461.9 yards per game. Scoring offense was 16th, so right in line at 35.1 points per game. Defense was tied for 68th, tied with UF, by the way, for 382.2 yards per game. And scoring defense was better than UF, tied for 34th at 22.08 points per game. So they gave up a bunch of yards, but again, didn't give up a lot of points, comparatively speaking. Returning impact players include their leading tackler from last season, safety Trey Washington. You don't hear that often, that a safety is a team's leading tackler, but I guess when you have the situation that they had, that can happen. And I'm not sure. I think our leading tackler actually might have been a safety also, but we lost our leading tackler halfway through the season, so it's a little bit of a different story. I think Castell might have been our leading tackler last season when it was all said and done, but a little different situation for us because we lost our star linebacker. But anyway, they also return their joint sack leader in Jared Ivey and their leading receiver in yardage, not in receptions, but in yardage from last season, which is Trey Harris. And then, of course, the big returning starter that they get back is quarterback Jackson Dart. Impact transfers are comprised of their leading rusher from last year at Miami, aforementioned, Henry Parrish. Now, that's significant because they lost a huge player in their running back room, and I'll get to that. They also added 7 4-stars. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the number 1 ranked transfer class for those that didn't know in the country. Ole Miss, number 1. 7 4-stars added and 1 5-star, most significant of which are wide receiver Juice Wells out of South Carolina, defensive end Prince Mamielen, as you might be aware, and of course, defensive lineman Walter Nolan, who is the top-ranked player in the portal out of Texas A&M, Florida West. However, Ole Miss did lose 2 4-stars. This is why they were the number 1 ranked class, because they added all that talent and only lost 2 4-stars in the whole class. That's why they were number 1 ranked, because the deficiency was much greater on the intake than the outtake, right? So they lost Kendrick Riscano, who was 1 4-star running back, and the outstanding Quinshon Judkins, or Judkins, depending on the pronunciation there. That is the big loss, who, of course, went to Ohio State. Additionally, from the secondary, they also lost a highly rated 3-star in Ladarius Tennyson. He was actually rated as a 4-star out of high school, but his transfer portal ranking was only as a high 3-star. So he actually played at Rockledge High, interestingly enough. Anyway, so the portal rankings were not, or the portal rankings are significant here. Their transfer portal class was outstanding. However, the thing to keep in mind with Ole Miss is, while Kiffin has done a great job in the portal, his recruiting is mid, right? His recruiting classes are not great, so he has to kill the portal or he won't have a team, right? So you have to keep that in mind. So don't get too hung up on that portal ranking, because without it, they don't have anything. They're still like a 15th, 16th, maybe 17th rated overall class when you factor in transfers and recruits, because they were like in the 20s for recruiting. As of my last check. Now I can't swear to that, but that was the last time I looked at it. So overall, despite the transfer hype for Ole Miss, I don't see a team on paper here that is substantially better than the one they fielded last year. Slight upgrade maybe, but nothing huge. The D line is certainly improved, but I would argue that the running back room has definitely taken a step back. I mean, Henry Parrish may have been the leading rusher at Miami, but that ain't Quinshon Judkins. I mean, that guy's a freak. So beyond that, it's hard to see where there's significant movement elsewhere, right? Wide receiver, maybe a little plus, but it's, they had a good wide receiver that went pro. There's nothing there that's like super, stands out as being really a lot of movement. Having said this, again, games in the swamp, that's a huge help. And it will come down to how well can UF's defense contain the explosiveness of Kiffin's offense. That is the battle in this game to me. Can we keep them under 30, maybe under 28? Because I think we can score that much at home against this team, especially this late in the season. But can we keep them under that number? I don't know. They averaged 35.1 last year. I don't see anything preventing them from averaging that this year. If they score 35 plus against us in the swamp, I don't know that we win. I really don't. I don't think we can get into a shootout with this team and win it. So to that end, even in the swamp, 46% is my number.
Wow. That's actually a little bit higher than I thought you were going to think.
Well, it's because I'm giving our defense a chance. I think with the fact that our defense will have had enough time playing together, really gelled, and I like the potential that this unit has, I'm giving us a chance at doing what I'm suggesting. If we can't do it, then it's over. But if we can, then I think we can get that win, and that's why I'm putting it where I got it.
I dig it. You've got me by 6 percentage points. I'm at 40.
Wow. Biggest swing the other way of the day. Okay. Fair enough. That's 3 in a row. I picked higher than you. Interesting. All right. The tables have turned as we've gone along here. Very interesting. Okay. All right. I like it. All right. FSU, close us out. Last game.
FSU, here we go, people. And for those of you listening still, thank you so much. As Ben mentioned, this was going to be a labor-intensive pod, a lot of information, a lot of stats, a lot of names, a lot of numbers. Yeah. And you're seeing the byproduct of that. Okay. FSU, ACC, it is what it is. Boo, hoo. We didn't get an opportunity. Overall 12-0, conference 8-0. Again, with all due respect, Jordan Travis, I tell you what, that is a true testament. I'll just say this about Jordan Travis, a true testament for hanging around a system, believing for 4 years.
Agreed.
And that culmination of what last season was. Tragic way to end it. I'm sorry, flat out, tragic way to end it, for him.
Sure.
Felt bad for him. So that was what it was. Let's get into it. Offensive points per game, 34.6, number 19 in FBS. Offensive yards per game, 401.6, number 52 in FBS. Defensive side of the football, defensive points per game, 19.29, 8 good for 18th in FBS. Defensive yards per game, 331.9, or at 5.02 yards per play. Good enough for number 28 in FBS. Okay, so here's the deal. Different turf. Last year they were in the swamp. This year we go to Tallahassee. So let's talk about the additions and losses. Let's first talk about losses. Obviously, Jordan Travis is gone. They had another guy in Rosenberger. For those of you who remember the movie The Rookie back in the early or mid 1990s. Tate Rodemaker, great pickup for them. He was supposed to be their QB for the next few years, but he kind of transferred to another school that we referenced earlier, or that Ben referenced, Ole Miss. They had 10 total leave in the transfer portal. So they had to, and here's the thing about Norvell. He's been shifting the portal. He's been able to make it work. Although Ben and I mentioned this a while ago, it seems like he threw everything, bet the farm to build this team to have it what it did last year. They gave up a lot and it didn't work. And like I said, it was just a shame the way Travis's season ended. Really wanted to see him finish out the season strong and see really what FSU was made of. Obviously, their last game was not a true depiction of that. So it was what it was. Let's see what they lost. Jared Verse, he was kind of a wrecking ball. Defensive end went number 19
he was a little good.
A little good, went to the Rams. Keon Coleman, wide receiver, a little good. Number 33 overall went to the Bills. Braden Fisk, defensive line, number 39 overall to the Rams. And then a host of others. Renardo Green went number 64th overall. Jarian Jones, 96. Jordan Travis actually went number 171 overall to the Jets. Johnny Wilson, tall wide receiver, number 185 to the Eagles. Trey Benson, their running back, went 66 overall to the Cardinals. Jaheim Bell went, then Bethune. Again, lost a total of, you had, let's see, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 to the draft. So,
and let's recap. That's both starting defensive ends. That's both starting wide receivers. That's a starting quarterback and a starting running back.
And a partridge in a pear tree. So outside of that, when you look at the additions, again, Norvell had to go deep into his bag in his transfer portal. They picked up Marvin Jones Jr., number 5 wide receiver, number 31 overall pick, who left UGA, who left UGA. Didn't think he was going to get playing time, so that was what it was. Maybe got a bit of money. We'll see. Sean Murphy. This is a big pickup from Alabama. Number 5 transfer linebacker, 4-star. Jaylen Brown, number 11 wide receiver, transfer left. Where? LSU. Interesting.
Yeah, that's kind of a big one for sure. I think they were expecting him to do some things at LSU. That was a pretty big get for FSU on that one.
Huge. FSU to LSU. Maybe it's an acronym thing. Who the hell knows? Roy Dell Williams, number 7 transfer running back out of Alabama again. So the impact of Saban echoing throughout the SEC. Here's another one. Malik Benson, right? Number 1 JUCO. Transfer wide receiver from Alabama. You had 2 more transfers come out of Alabama. And of course, people know this name, Richie Leonard, right? 3-star interior offensive lineman from, of course, the Gators. And then probably, according to Norvell, their biggest get, DJ Uiagalelei, bless you, by way of
good for you. That was hey, hold on. Clap for the pronunciation. Very nice. I can't do it.
By way of Clemson and Oregon State. Number 14 transfer QB in the portal. Outside of that, we'll see what happens. So let's look at the breakdown. B, you already read my mind. You said it earlier. Look at the losses on the offensive and the defensive side of the football. Arguably, the offensive side of the football, Travis was going to be gone anyways to the draft, but to know that they lost Roddenberger and they lost Beck. Beck was supposed to be their true freshman, Blondie. He was supposed to be really good, 4-star, highly touted. He leaves in the portal. So Norvell has to go to the portal to get a quarterback. Great. So that is what it is. When you look at Travis, Coleman, Wilson, Benson, and Verse, and you look at their production, all that's gone, going to be replaced. Norvell, starting back like he did back in 21 and 22. And we all know FSU's record back in 21 and 22. So on that basis, I look at this game. The only stinky part about it is the fact that we're going to be in Tallahassee. Outside of that, looking on paper, the neutrality of things, but in overall production, a negative on paper. And I don't think, no disrespect to him, I just don't believe their DJ is not as good as our DJ, and their DJ does not have 6 inches between the ears. He just doesn't. That was the main reason why he failed at Clemson, and the main reason why he was subpar at Oregon State. So on that basis, I have the Gators a 60% probability in the win, the probability to get the win here against FSU in Tallahassee. What do you got, Pete?
I like it. I like it a lot. So you kind of mentioned it. We'll just sum it up. I don't think anybody they had transfer in replaces those defensive ends. I don't think anybody they have transferring in necessarily replaces that running back, though that one's probably not as important. Their wide receiver talent is close to comparable to what they lost, though I don't think you can replace that height and that size at wide receiver that they had. But clearly, the biggest deficiency is you do not have a quarterback that is replacing Jordan Travis with the ability and experience, as you pointed out, in that system. And that's the thing. Even if DJ was as good as Jordan, which I don't think he is, I'm pretty confident he's not, he doesn't have 4 years experience in the system. So there's no way he's going to perform the same way that Jordan did in his 4th year there. There's no way they're not negative on paper. They may still be a decent team for sure, but they're not plus on paper. No way. I'm going to put it 58. It's still Tallahassee, as you put it. I still don't want to give us huge odds of winning this. But I think percentage-wise, I'm going to drop it 57. I'm going to put it 57. So, but that's still a plus chance to win. But it's very coin flippy. It's very coin flippy, as that game can tend to be. Talent wise, I think we are better on paper. But you go into a hostile environment. It's the last game of the season. It's a huge rivalry game. There could be a lot riding on it for either team, depending on the situation. You never know what's going to happen, right? So there's a lot that could factor into that, and you just don't know what's going to happen there. So yeah, that's a really tough one to call from a probability standpoint, especially this far out, right? But for now, just again looking at things on paper, that's where I've got it. So let's wrap this thing up. It's been a marathon. We're just over the 2-hour mark right now. So let's see if we can close this thing out. So it's interesting. So from a percentage standpoint, and I promise I've been as objective as I could possibly be. I believe and I think we were pretty unanimous on this. I don't think we split one over the 50 line anyway. We favored UF in 8 games. Is that accurate? Because we didn't have them favored against Georgia, Ole Miss, Texas. Was there another one actually? Or was it 9 games we had them favored in?
Georgia, Ole Miss, Texas.
I think that was actually it.
No, because Tennessee we had there, no?
Oh no, Tennessee. We did have them negative in Tennessee. That was the 4th one. We had that sub 50. Or maybe you didn't and I did. Maybe you didn't and I did. I don't know. But I definitely had it under. I can't remember where you had it.
Tennessee, we were 1 percentage point off because I was a 40, you said 39.
Okay, yes. Yeah, so that was the other one. So that's 4. So we had it percentage-wise at 8-4. Do I think we're going 8-4? No, I do not. But because percentages don't always work out that way, right? And LSU was a basically true coin flip. We're calling this one very coin flippy. And frankly, Texas A&M, I only had it 62, and that's borderline coin flippy, right? So there's a bunch of stuff in here. It doesn't mean this is the record, right? We're just trying to predict what we think the chances are. And again, this is as of right now, and there's still a ton of unknowns. We really wanted to go through and do this because we really wanted to look at the chances. Frankly, it's interesting that it came out the way that it did. I didn't expect it to be 8-4 from that standpoint. But again, we're not trying to predict the record here. We'll do that later in the season. We just wanted to look at what we thought the chances were that we could win these games. And I think when you look at it, other than 2 games? Maybe 3. We weren't above 70% on anything. I think you were above 70 on maybe 3 or 4, and I was above 70 on 3. I mean, this is not favorable because you want to be above 70 to really feel pretty confident about a win, right? Anything below 70, you're starting to get a little, I don't know, And so that's where we're really at, and I think that's what it comes down to. Is there's a lot of these that could definitely swing either way, right? And that's really the sum of this. And not only can they will. Right. That's what it comes down to. Not all of these are going to go this way. Right. You have to have stuff really align and be kind of perfect to even probably go 8-4, certainly 9-3. And that's why we've kind of talked about the whole year that 9-3 is probably the absolute ceiling for this season. Right. You're just not going to do better than that. There's just no way, because there's 2 games on here you're just not winning, barring some kind of freak accident. and then there's another one that you're almost certainly not winning to go along with that, whichever one it may be. And then that's just it. So any closing thoughts from you on that?
No, well said. And quite frankly, it's interesting how the probabilities work out, right? Where we are 8 up and 4 down. So um, anything can happen. I agree with your term as much as I don't like the term. I agree with your term coin flipping because of different circumstances that could happen. For example, in a Texas game, which they're going to be heavily favored, who's to say something doesn't happen at Quinn Ewers, and next thing you know, we see Arch Manning for the first time ever come in
I
and
don't want that though.
Yeah, I get it. I get it. But right now, Quinn's still the starter for whatever reason, and it is what it is. So be
No,
it.
I hear you. I hear you though, and you're right. You don't know, and that's the whole point. You don't know stuff that's going to happen, but you don't know stuff that's going to happen to us and everything else. So we'll see how it plays out. And I think the real takeaway here, like we said, is that there's there's very few kind of surefire things on here, right? One was in the 90s, and nothing else was even in the 80s for either
Yeah.
one of us. That's your takeaway here. And again, you had it at 100, what I had at 97.5, whatever. So there's one sure thing, and
I guess
that's it. And that's it. There's one sure thing, and that's it. That's your takeaway. So like the potential exists to go 1-11. Like I'm not saying it's going to happen because that's not likely either. But like that's what we're saying here. That's how hard this is that it's ridiculous that we really only have one kind of lock on this schedule. It's wild. It's absolutely wild. I've really never seen anything like it for any team in college football ever. So hold on to your hats, Gator Nation, because it's going to be a wild 2024. And that's all I got for you. If you got anything else, feel free. But otherwise, I think we're about ready for that sign off.
I tell you what, man. Yeah, a lot of work. Those of you still
Yes.
listening, thank you for listening. Hopefully, you found this relevant, interesting, unique, different, quirky, and a very, very deep dive. But either way, wherever you are, wherever you may be listening, thank you so much for taking the time, and we will see you around Gator Nation.